We're talking today with Chester Johnson of Grand Junction, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Chester, start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in South Haven, Michigan in 1949. I lived in Grand Junction out there. Went to our little four-room schoolhouse thing till 8th grade, and but I went from Grand Junction and moved to Benton Harbor downtown, and what a kind of education that was, going to a big school with over 500 kids in my class. So going from knowing nothing to being in the action was pretty rough to walk.
Okay, so what years were you in high school?
I graduated in 1967, so all those, and I kind of had a job in high school, so it kept me, I had my afternoon schedule, and it was pretty neat, independent, you might say.
Okay, now what was your family doing for a living when you were a kid?
Well, my dad was a tool and die maker. He had his own little shop and had the family working with everybody, and he was sort of in charge of that deal, Johnson Tool and Die. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to have your family work for you when, well, we always thought he was the only one that really knew what he was doing. But they demanded equal pay, of course, Breedsville, Michigan.
Okay, so did you work for the family business then, or did you do something else?
I was 5 years old, like in 1960, or 10 years old when we got out of that. It was just too hard on my dad, and he was kind of a lifelong drinker. It seemed like he was never home, and big family and all, but yet I always seemed like I was running the streets by myself, sort of. Behaving and, you know, going to the school and playing ball and the whole thing. But
okay. Now, Benton Harbor, 67, so was that, did you have a lot of black kids there?
Oh, yeah. It was like 50-50 blacks in the high school, and very good. I think it was sort of what I thought was high-end of education thing. The state basketball champion thing was going real good. The sports is an indication of everything. And one of the things we were most proud of is, like, they were national champion bands, the orchestra and things like that. And I always heard that, like, when they went to Chicago for the competition, like, they had won for 30 years or something. And finally they said, don't ever come back. But,
all right. And so...
Nice school.
Okay. All right. Now, when you graduated from high school, then what did you do?
Well, I was working at... for the South Bend Tribune, just part of the delivery system around there, but I was kind of a boss or something, so that was nice, and could have been into the office business thing from that, but I went to worked for them a couple years in high school and everything. That worked real good, and then I think after high school, about 1968, I got a job at Avion Coach Corporation. Mm-hmm. And it was a nice little family outfit, 100 people or something. And I was thinking the other day that over 100 people worked there, but there was only one other Vietnam veteran that I could remember ever being there. It's kind of unusual, but we didn't talk about stuff like that.
Okay. But you were working there before you went into the Army?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Very important to have a job waiting for you.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now you graduate from high school in 67 and you're not going to college. Did you figure that sooner or later you were going to get drafted, or did you
I think I kind of was. We're you know, ready sort of, but I still was working and having a good time, and so when I got drafted, I was kind of ready for that.
Okay. So when do you get drafted?
I got drafted, say, January of 1969 it was. Mm-hmm. And and then I went in mid-February of 69.
Okay. Now, when you're getting processed in, where do you go first? Where do you report initially?
Well, I guess we had just an office thing about the appointment and everything, but we went on a Greyhound bus and started there in Benton Harbor, and that's where that office was. And as we come across the state, we'd stop at different places. Oddly enough, you'd remember this guy getting on, and then months later, he's a pal. You know, it's kind of funny, they're Michigan guys. But as we went across the state to Detroit, to Fort Pick, that was the hotel there, but that's where you went to have your physical and, you know, check you out and everything the first time.
Okay. Now, how rigorous was the physical?
Well, this was heart rate and that kind of thing. Nothing lifting weights or not that type of a physical.
Okay.
And I'm sure they did a mental test thing on it at the time.
Now, did you notice anybody trying to beat the system or get funny heart rates? Or?
Well, the physical part, not necessarily, but, you know, the mental part, all of a sudden they started wearing glasses or something. And I know guys that did that, but they were deathly afraid of going.
All right. And so you get through that. After the physical and stuff, then what happens?
Well, you go back home, and so I'm there 3 months or something, and you get the second notice. Uncle Sam says, you know, come on in, you're drafted, but you do the same thing again. Go back to Detroit to that place on a bus, and then it's just an overnight. You're going to check you again, and it was the first time I ever flew an airplane. It was normal for people from Michigan going to Fort Knox, Kentucky was just the way it was done. But like right out of the blue, we were the first group to go to Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Okay.
Fort Bragg it was. And so that was very different.
Okay. And what kind of reception do you get at Fort Bragg?
Well, nothing big particular, except that Fort Bragg was like a airborne, 101st Airborne, I believe, home or something.
82nd Airborne, probably.
Was it?
101st is Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Okay.
But it's a big airborne base.
It was airborne. The point is, instead of when you do your basic training and everything you do, you didn't go anywhere unless you ran there. And if you're going to lunch and back, it was okay to walk, but every step, if you got caught not running where you were going, you got in trouble. And as a whole company, we ran. So, and I enjoyed that forever. I did 10Ks and all that. 20 years later, I enjoyed that. It's not easy.
Okay. All right. And how much emphasis was there on discipline?
We were very disciplined at the time, I think, and especially the airborne, you know, sharp dressing and all that. It was basic, where you'd go, you know, learn gun techniques and some marching and just real, let's see what these guys are like thing. And
okay. And how easy or hard was it for you to adjust to life in the Army?
Well, I was ready. I knew that, you know, this had to be done, sort of, serve your country, I guess, or something. I didn't know hardly anybody else that was doing this. And even though I was from a very large class and everything, you know, just didn't know the other people doing this.
Right.
So.
Okay. But, and how did the drill instructors treat you?
They were, you know, mean and all that and everything, but it's part of what you're doing, and, you know, you learn to push the extra push-ups or something. And, well, part of what I remember doing is they had a little bar, and you had to crawl under that through the mud and dirt and everything. And one guy went through that, and because this stuff was happening if you weren't doing a good job, and he got through it and too slow, but it didn't matter how fast and hard he did. He says, you do it again. And he went through it the second time. And when he come out of there, his chin was almost gone because he scraped it on the ground. But this is the craziness to please. There was a lot of that there, but you learn to put that extra out, I guess, the airborne way.
Okay. All right. And when you went in, did you have any idea of what kind of assignment you were going to get, or did they determine
you know,
that
kind of
after?
fear the worst or whatever, but Vietnam was all part of that deal. I mean, anything else is a vacation. while you're in there. I had friends that had been places already in Germany and all that, but he screwed that up and wound up in Vietnam.
All right. But you just kind of expected you were going to go to Vietnam
Yeah.
and be infantry, or
Most likely.
okay. All right.
And I like the hunting and shooting and gun thing. That was in the family, so I knew my way around that.
Okay. And so, at what point do you find out where you're going next?
Well, at the end of basic training, they wait like this 8 weeks. You're in there, and you'll know 3 or 4 days before or something. And here's you guys, and there's a list of them. They go, oh, Jim's going with me, or that kind of thing. And we went to Fort McClellan, Alabama, which is the home of the Women's Army Corps. Not that that ever did us any good, but it was a different thing. You're thinking, oh, the ladies thing, but it wasn't like that. You mean they're very, very dedicated to being, and you had returning Vietnam veterans that were usually your instructors, and they wanted to see you be smart and do a good job and protecting you to learn this.
Okay.
It's going to protect your life.
So this is your advanced individual training?
Yes, it
now?
is.
Okay. And what were you being trained to do at that point?
Well, I don't know. Somehow that I think, like I say, Benton Harbor was a higher. All the other kids were getting A's. I got a C. I still got a good education there, I say, because I was doing mortars, and I guess that's classroom work a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So we were more so in a classroom now all of a sudden, and you had to dress nice. But and my other friends were dragging through the dirt and doing the real rifle every day, and well, we were sitting in the classroom quite a bit.
Okay. So at Fort McClellan, I mean, how large a group were you training with?
That was only like a 30 men in our. We had a company that would have been 100 people, and there are other little buildings, but our building had like 25 or 30 bunks in it, double bed bunks, and so we operated with like 30 in that group right there.
Okay. So you're not at one of these really big infantry training bases. You're at something that's more specialized in other parts of the base or for other things.
Yeah, the whole fort was a lot smaller. So there was these other places.
Now, when you're at Fort McClellan, I mean, do you get to go off base at all?
It was pretty reasonable that we got off eventually after a couple weeks, that every weekend you'd get off Friday or Saturday nights. I went to the stock car races and stuff like that, and so that was pretty good.
Okay.
And part of what my group was there, I thought was interesting, is almost all these other 30 men in my outfit there were college educated, degrees, but it was the end of the college deferment a lot, and so you had these people with 2 and 3 years of college or something, but they still had to be the smarter guys. So I didn't feel to be the real bright guy in the group, but they were all, way smart guys. So I still prided myself a little.
Okay. So it's a little bit different group. Now, were most of them white?
Yes, I'd say at that time basic training was sort of 50-50, and that was kind of rough getting together, but eventually even the Southern boys and we became a group. And then in this there was, I don't know if you say like 10-ish% or 10 out of 30 guys, probably 3 or 4. I can only remember a couple, but
3 or 4 were black and the rest?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if they're in college, you have a higher percentage probably than a lot of them will be white.
I imagine, yes.
All right. So is that another 8 weeks?
Well, 8 weeks in basic, and then this is 8 weeks in AIT, in Fort McClellan, Alabama, which is the back door to Atlanta. So we had breaks, new kids from Chicago. Hey, let's go see the Cubs. I'd never been to a ball game, really, and so we saw them a couple times. The '69 Cubs were almost world champions.
Yeah, I know.
And but that was pretty easy going, and no stress or anything.
Okay. Now, you mentioned you had returning Vietnam veterans as
Yes.
instructors. Did they talk to you much about Vietnam or what to expect there?
We weren't really around them at that time,
Okay.
but when they did their classes, where they were teaching you how to clean a rifle or whatever. It was part of that, and nice fellas, really. I mean, to be picked, most of them were sergeants to be in charge of this kind of thing. So that's a particular thing in itself, you know, I thought.
Okay. Now, what do they do with you after AIT?
Well, after AIT, they do the same thing right at the end of that deal. A real big surprise, you know, give you the list of all these guys that, and, you know, all the smart college guys and everything. Well, I'm picked to go to NCO school at Fort Bragg, which was
Fort Benning?
Fort Benning, yeah, right there. So that's the where the airborne trains and everything. So to go there was really off the wall, and that's for 3 months at least. And so I was like starstruck after that. For me to be with that outfit.
Okay. So most of the other guys you were training with just went on to regular assignments then?
Yeah, I'd say, well, 9 out of 10 or more.
Okay. All right. So now you're going to NCO school, and can you describe that? What was that like?
Well, again, that odd group was the other guys were in learning the battlefield techniques and building bunkers and that kind of. Again, we were in a classroom, and I'm not a college kid. This is kind of unusual for, gee, how many of these figures here are you using? But by golly, they kept us busy, firing the mortars, learning those, you know, from the little to the big ones, and maintenance and the whole deal. So it was pretty unusual to be in a group like that. And boy, is that different. This ain't the Army. And I was having a great time.
Okay. So you weren't doing a lot of extended field exercises or things like that?
A bit, but I knew what the other infantry was doing, and I couldn't complain any. And actually, here's another thing that happened after the first, 2 months. Yeah, 2 months in basic, 2 months in AIT. We went from that, and probably at E2 I might have been, but they give you E4 pay, a corporal immediately. So that's like a shot in the arm. They actually pay you, and they expect you to buy better clothes, and this is what it's about. Now, you're this corporal, and if you're successful, they'll give you the E5, and you get that money right away. And everybody else in the Army, was a big thing for people to go to Nam and back, and they never made any money, you know, unless they were a good card player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it would take them longer to get the promotions. I guess you make normally E3 when you go overseas.
Well, that's mandatory.
Yeah, it's mandatory, but then still it takes some time to get to E4 and then 5. So if you start at E5, then that's better. Okay.
Well, the rank thing, I found that during my year in Vietnam, that it was non-existent. The E3 there, man, I never saw anybody get specialist. Like, it was rare. The rank thing was for the people in the rear, I think. It was not fair.
Okay. All right. So you spent 3 months then training at Fort Benning?
It was, if I remember the dates exactly right, but I was there for, if I was there 3 months training, then once I got my E5, part of what they wanted to do is see if you're worthy of being a leader then. Mm-hmm. So they sent me from Fort Benning then to Fort Polk, Louisiana. And as it was, there was quite a few of us, and they just picked, these different guys, and all of a sudden, these are your friends. We teamed up and drove over there in 2 cars, these young guys, and all that, staying in motels and everything. That was a big deal, And once you get there, they assigned me to a group where I had like 100 men in a building all by myself. And then here I am, a kid, I know what really, but those 100 guys, Sergeant Johnson, and you fall in line. He expects this, so okay. I was devoted.
All right. So what was your actual function there? What part of the training were you in charge of,
or
what did you do?
We had this large building with as many as 100 kids in my building, and there was lines of them there, and all my other friends were in these other buildings. I had a nice little room there, but I had the tiny little bunk, just like the rest of the guys did, in a footlocker. I mean, I was just like them, except I was Sergeant Johnson there by myself. And, a kid had a radio, stereo we wound up having in my room because he couldn't have it. But basically, what I did was make them behave and everything. I couldn't hardly leave or go out of my room 24 hours a day, unless what we did is, in the morning, we got together in our big groups, and they might have done some exercise or something, but basically went to breakfast together as a group, and they'd have breakfast, we'd come back and gather up, and they had classes to go to. And what we would do is march them around the fort to different classes, and that was my job, is to be in charge of them right there. And then they were in that class right there. A lot of times, well, this is mortar people too, again, and a lot of them. And me and my friends were, I don't know if I got pictures of that, but 4 or 5 of us laying out there. I don't even remember us smoking and stuff much, because I certainly didn't like the cigarette thing and never did. But you could have just kicked back and waiting for them to be done with their classes, and maybe they'd come out at lunch, you'd march them to lunch,
All right. So you weren't expected to do any of the longer marching with them or the training out in the field?
Well, we did part of that too. I remember, like in the NCO school, part of what we did is you do the mortar, but part of it is learning the 45 and how to tear it apart and do the whole thing. And very hard to master that. I think you're supposed to have 3 days on it. And the guy says, well, you're going to have to do this morning, kind of thing. But we did do a job where we took them out into the field. I was telling a friend of mine this yesterday. And the mortar group again, the other guys are crawling through the bushes and they were making stuff for them, but we dug about a 4-foot by 8-foot long hole in the ground, about 8 foot deep, and then you had to cover it with sticks over the top, and it had stairways going down in it, and then from there it was like 3 trenches out in a circle, and great big circles out there with mortars in them. And it's kind of funny that, oh yeah, you do that. We're out there 3 or 4 days or something, digging these holes, probably with the little shovel too, in Louisiana dirt. And I guess it was funny, but the other sergeant, E6 or lieutenant or somebody, come over there, and he comes over there and looks at it. Nice job, guys. Fill it in. I mean, we had dug it probably a couple hours before, but what are you going to do? That's what we're doing. Nobody's shooting at us yet, so.
All right. Now, did you have to do any sort of bivouacs or being out overnight with the men in the field? Or
well, that was part of that.
Part
Was
of
3 or 4 days or so, and so they had their backpack stuff. They brought our food and stuff like that in, I'm sure. But yeah, we stayed out there overnight a few times.
Okay. All right. And when do you finish that?
Well, by the months I could figure that out, but I finished in early December, I think it was, or mid-December, and they give us, very unusual that I come in the Army a couple months after Christmas. Well, then there I was there and had a 30-day leave of absence at Christmas and New Year's again. So again, I wasn't in there then. I thought that was kind of fun.
Well, you'll normally get a leave after you go through all that training and before you go overseas.
Right, definitely. But I was in almost a year before I got that.
Right. Between the different trainings, as they had the
Yep.
training and then the stuff.
We got a week or two, and sometimes they sent you straight there.
Okay. So once you get your leave over the holidays, basically, now do you report back to Fort Polk, or are you heading off to Vietnam, or what's next?
Well, I would have been home, and from there we went to, I think, Chicago Airport, and I had a local fella that we trained together and I never knew him from these little towns, but wound up knowing him, and the family took us to Chicago in their GTO, and we flew from Chicago to Fort Lewis, Washington, and that's where we departed from there. So you didn't go back to a fort necessarily.
Okay. So you're basically, your next assignment basically is going to be Vietnam.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I already know that. I probably had the orders already from there and went over there and did another physical, I'm sure. Really, they don't send you over there without that kind of stuff.
Do they give you shots and things before you go to
I'm
Vietnam?
sure you got them all the time.
Okay. All right. And then how did they get you to Vietnam? You leave Fort Lewis and...
I left Fort Lewis and we went to Anchorage, Alaska. And I remember getting there and it probably being 0 out there, and ran out there and running around in freezing, 0 or something out there. But hey, what do we care? Could get worse. Maybe I'll break my leg. Kind of funny, joking with that kind of stuff. But so then from Anchorage, real quick stop, I don't know, 30 minutes or an hour or something. And I don't even know if we left the plane, probably. But then from there, we went through Tokyo real quick and walking through the airport there somehow, maybe taking a break again. But, the Japanese dudes ain't quite up to your shoulder. But I know they were bad dudes. The whole army walking through the airports and stuff. But you got to respect them. What the heck?
All right. And then is Vietnam the next stop from
Yes,
there?
it is.
Okay. And where do you land in Vietnam?
Well, I think it was China Beach, if I remember right.
Well, so Da Nang, basically.
Or
Or
not Da Nang. I think we were down south when we come in.
well,
I remember
okay.
right.
You have different. Were you on the coast or were you inland?
Well, we started on the coast.
Okay.
Chu Lai is my home base.
Chu Lai is your base. A lot of times you might land at Cam Ranh Bay.
It was Cam Ranh Bay.
Yeah, and then
right,
they-
which
and
is
then-
down south.
That's farther
down
south,
south.
yeah.
Some. Right. I forget.
Okay. Now, did you show up during the day or at night?
Well, it was another little. I always thought I was lucky doing these things. Gee, I went through NCO school. Where'd that come and everything? And they go, well, here we are, and we're coming to Vietnam. And you had the American stewardesses and the pilots, and all that was American stuff. And they go, and we kind of knew it was February 1st. It was going to be in the Bay. You were in over enemy territory, the sea, on January 30 or 31st or something. So you get combat pay for January. So, oh boy, $60 extra. 65 a month you only got. And then landed February 1st in that morning. It was daytime in the morning, I'm pretty sure.
All right. And what's your first impression of Vietnam when you get there?
I'm sure the air and everything was real different, but no big deal. I had been in by a year by that time, and I had a couple people that recognized me or something, so it's kind of, you got something different on your mind there. And, well, I had to be in charge of people. I'm kind of eyeballing that thing. Not yet, but I didn't have an assignment, but it probably stunk or something, but what the heck are you going to do?
Sure. All right. So once you land there, what do they do with you?
Well, we were there a couple days, and if I remember, I probably, was it another jet or a C-130? I can't remember how we got to Chu Lai from there, but we were only in Cam Ranh Bay. That's right, for a couple days,
Right.
and then went up to Chu Lai, and the same thing. They hadn't assigned us to this company yet, and so you get there for, I think we were there 2 or 3 days. Same kind of thing. They're not necessarily have you assigned yet. They figure they might even evaluate you and send you out or something. Who knows?
Okay. So how did you spend your time while you're on these bases?
Well, these other ones, there wasn't a lot going on there. You might have some free time. I don't remember. I'm sure I found the EM Club was facing over the China Sea right there, and I mean, who has that view? And our some of our bunkers there were, I mean, you could throw a rock into the ocean right there. It was kind of, who needs to guard this? But hey, there you go.
All right. And what did the base look like? What was the terrain like around Chu Lai?
It was mild, hilly there because actually, like I say, we were right next to the ocean,
Right.
which was a couple 100 feet down to the water there, and just pure dirt. There wasn't a blade of grass or a tree or anything because they bulldoze stuff clean when they get to place and put these little buildings. Those places had like a wooden deck for a floor, and you were on the cheapest 18-inch wide single bed that there is in existence with a 2-inch mattress and things. But really, if you had that in the jungle, you would have thought you were in heaven, you know.
Okay, so you're just there, okay, and then you get assigned to a unit?
Yes,
All
yeah.
right. And for the record, what unit were you assigned to?
I was assigned for the B Company, 1st of the 46, Americal,
Okay,
196.
yeah. So you have B Company, 1st Battalion, 46th Regiment, which is part of the 96th, is it Light Infantry Brigade?
196.
Or 196, yeah.
Light Infantry Brigade.
Okay,
Yes.
which in turn is part of the 23rd Division, which is known as the Americal.
Yes.
Yeah, so we just line up all of that stuff for
Yes.
the record there. Yep, okay. And where were they when you joined them?
Well, my first assignment was to go out to LZ Professional, and your group lands there. And this is another thing about a lot of this stuff. Most of it you did by yourself. It was almost never have somebody you would know going back and forth, and that goes from the minute you're there. It's kind of a different thing there.
Okay, so when did you actually arrive in Vietnam?
Well,
February?
yeah, it actually was my 21st.
That's right. So it's 1970, because it was February 1st, 1970 is when you land.
Oddly enough, it took that long between, now that I think about it, February 1st, kind of that morning when I got there, and my first day in the field on LZ Professional there was my birthday, February 18th. So
Okay.
that took 18 days of this jockeying and goofing around. I really can't remember exactly what we were doing. I remember getting mortared a few times. You had to go on guard duty and some things, but there's going to be a lot worse things there than having hot food and the whole deal.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty good living.
So probably most of the time you spent at Chu Lai waiting to get sent out.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But now you join the unit. Now where was LZ Professional?
LZ Professional was about 30 or 40 kilometers. We always thought it was way out there from straight west of Chu Lai, which is a very large air base there. They have jets and everything land there.
Yeah, okay. So around Professional, were you in the mountains now or foothills?
When you get there, you're on this huge base that probably holds 600 or 800 people, and a lot of them are in mortars, and or somebody be in charge of the helicopter pad, and on and on. And then you always have like 3 companies. That's maybe 200 to 300 men that are. That's all they do is guard duty around there, and we take turns to do our patrols off into the mountains around there, and our patrols were anywhere from usually 3 weeks to maybe even a month long. You'd be out there, and the helicopters would resupply you, and you'd be usually about an 80-man group out there. So.
Okay. So basically, they would patrol in company-sized units.
Our outfit, that's the way we did, right around 70 to 80 men.
All right. Now, when you got there, were you just an infantryman, or were you already? Were you part of a mortar crew?
Well, you're still a beginner when you get there, so they assign you to you don't have anybody assigned to you yet, so I'm in somebody else's deal, and I always prided myself with being, a country kid, a point man, and cutting trails all the time. I love that. Everybody, they wouldn't carry a pencil if they had to, but I had the great big machete and a buck knife, and nobody was getting me without.
Okay. All right. So when you joined the unit, how were you received?
They're pretty busy in their own thing, and they have the individual come and go all the time. And there was a whole flock of us sergeants at the time. The training thing was in high gear, and And I thought we were received well, and they joke or they might play a card game here and there, although that was very rare, I found out later. But on the fire bases, that's part of what you'd have this extra little time, or you dig trenches or.
Because you're coming in as what they would sometimes call a shake and bake sergeant.
Sure.
You're the new guy.
There was a lot of us,
Yeah,
though.
yeah, at that point. And so, what approach did you take? Did you just try to learn from your squad leader or anybody around you?
Kind of. But I probably thought I was a wise guy. I was a sergeant then, see. They had to do what I said.
But initially you were assigned to somebody else's squad.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. And then how quickly did you feel like you were starting to catch on to what was going on or what they were doing?
I felt good immediately.
Okay.
You know, maybe I had issues before I went in that I was glad to get in there. And with this group and camaraderie, and I didn't go to college and pal up and all that, you know, individual, I felt real good at the time.
Okay. And how quickly did you start doing things like walking point and that sort of thing?
Immediately. Yeah, there's one picture in there of me and my pal there, and that was part of, and then again, taking pictures. I never seen anybody with a camera. Nobody wanted to wait, and also your camera got wet all the time.
Okay. So how did you wind up taking a camera with you?
Well, I always loved photography, and my dad was real big on every little stereo camera and Kodaks and, you know, the slide thing, and so I was into that from way back, and I just had like an ammo thing and just the junk old camera, and my mother, that's part of what she would do for me, is send me a package every month of everything I asked for, and part of it was film, or maybe some Havitampa cigars. And another one I did that I just thought, why am I doing this? Nobody else does. But I had a .30 caliber ammo can, and that was waterproof. So I could carry paper tablets, and when the ink pens and stuff, this is a like stupid thing, but I'd say, here, give me all them, 10 ink pens, here, I got them. If you want one, come and get it. And then they would write letters on my pad. I was kind of the postman, I thought. I thought I was brilliant. I had a radio, I had the camera, and all in there, and I never seen anybody else carry the ammo can thing.
All right.
Keep stuff dry.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. You said a radio. So you had like a little transistor radio?
I had about as big as a cigarette pack with an ear plug thing, completely not authorized.
Yeah. And was there any radio that you could pick up?
Oh yeah, there was. Pat Sajak was a Vietnam announcer, I understand, and there was 2 stations, same thing, but they had music on there and news, and I'm sure they did sports broadcasting and that, and yeah, they had real good radio, and geez, I mean, you could put a hat over the whole country, so to speak. And yeah, I had radio all the time.
Okay. All right. And okay, so you go out, you join the unit, and so you're now the LZ where you're at again. Is that up in hill country now?
Yes, definitely. So that's where it began there, LZ Professional.
Right. Okay. And as you're patrolling around there, was there much enemy activity at that point?
Not too bad right around there, and that it was an older fire base. In fact, it was the home of the 101st Airborne, they call it, part of the hill on LZ Professional. And, you know, the bad guys were there. Nobody wanted to mess with them. And near the big fire bases, everybody just learned to move away from that. Not enemy, we had mountain people that were living up there.
Yeah.
And we went to Dragon Valley, though, and that was high activity there of Viet Cong and this kind of stuff, and just learning some of that.
Okay.
And even took the little 60 mortar there, and there I went from my regular group, and I got put with the command center with the, you know, company commander and the mortar, the guy that was in charge of our artillery was one guy that did all that to bring, and that helped us. That's the way our unit worked. But we were with them with our little tiny mortar, and you're going, well, oh, that's not much. But I learned that when we got attacked and we'd set our mortar up, usually the first round that went off, I noticed there was never another shot at us. They feared that as much as we did. It's terrifying to see a sky full of mortars.
Okay, so you had a 60 millimeter mortar, and about how much did the parts of that weigh?
You've already got 40 pounds of food, ammunition and all that.
Yeah.
And then you have 40 pounds like of personal, your gear, and if I remember right, you had about 80 pounds. That's water too, and bullets and everything. But then that one base plate was 30 pounds. Very awkward. No handles on it. You got to carry it on your shoulder or something. So big guy, I get to do that. And this mortar was only 2 feet high. It's a tiny thing. But everybody had to carry mortar rounds for us. They sort of resented having that around. And it was pretty heavy deal.
Okay.
3 sergeants it takes to carry the little mortar.
Okay. So one of you has the base plate, one has the tube.
The tube, and then you have a fork thing. And the tube and the forks for the tube.
Right.
That's 3 very heavy pieces. But the base plate, crazy to carry that. And your gun and ammo.
All right. And you would you hump through the jungle that way?
Oh yeah, we were right with everybody else, but kind of protected. I didn't have to do point. I didn't have to worry about who was in front of me or back. We were sort of up there with the main command group.
Right. Okay. Of course, wouldn't a command group be a target?
Oh, of course. But part of having 70 or 80 men out there, it was hard to believe, but you had the captain or something over there. He might come and go, you see the helicopter go in and over there, but you were out front doing point up there. And at night, because we stayed out there every night for weeks and months at a time, you do a giant circle around the top of the hill. And when we got back, and then, okay, there's that guy there, and now we're a complete circle. And the guys in the middle, they were so secluded that sometimes I didn't see them for, it seems like a week or 2 at a time. That's how thick the jungle is, and that's how big of an area we'd be. Out there, it's kind of crazy to think that they were back there. But here, now we're out there with our mortar and everything. We were with the command group. We're protected now. Kind of funny.
Okay. Now, how much of the time your Vietnam tour did you spend with the mortar? Was that your main job?
Well, that's another thing. We had a captain. Lieutenants usually ran our company normally, but we had Captain Mayer, I think it was, Captain Bradley, and he was notorious when you went up to the A Shaw Valley and things like that. He would be in charge of that outfit, and the captain decides to take the mortar. So it was like 2 or 3 different a week at a time, or even less. So, but normally I was back with the regular platoon, and had my own squad too. That come and went, but eventually I was just a squad leader.
Okay, all right. And what kind of men did you have in your squad and platoon? What did you learn about them, or what kind of guys were they?
Well, you all had your shoot the breeze at night thing. Really, the radio was like nobody had that kind of thing, and I had a little earplug for it. If I let anybody use it, geez, if it come undone and started blasting, that happened once. But or like I always thought we'd be sitting around playing cards and everything. That was unusual. Nobody wanted to have any of that, or not like you saw somebody shooting dice or something. Not there, back when you're partying or something. But yeah, and it was another thing about being there, where we were, is you would be talking real. I mean, you get, and these guys right here, and so, and you might you might know their voice. And you can't see them, it's pitch black, you know. And you learn to, you got your little match pack, see, because we wound up having to do our own food every day. What a drag that is, these trashy little meals that they had. But I guess eventually, you know, existence is all you ask for. If you had peaches and that homemade coffee for breakfast, wow, you were cool.
All right. So you're basically living on sea rations most
Oh,
of the time.
completely.
Yeah.
Completely. I bargained my way into the Lerps, a couple of them, and to me, I put that in the bottom of the pack, and that was my extra food for emergency, because it was lightweight. I always had food.
Okay. So that's sort of the freeze-dried stuff, kind of
Yeah.
the ancestor of the MRE.
I might have had a half a dozen of them, and I probably had to pay for them. We were in that kind of outfit.
All right. Now, do you spend most of your time when you're in the field kind of out in the hill country, or did you also patrol the areas closer to Chu Lai?
No, we were never by Chu Lai. That was completely in the mountains, and we went from LZ Professional, and you'd operate off there. And I think we went on, we called them missions, and they, as one of the sergeants, I would get in on that deal, and okay, we're doing this, and they'd tell you kind of, tell the guys we're going to this place. It didn't mean anything anyway. You didn't know what you were doing. But we went to Marianne briefly for a week, and then a month later we moved there sort of permanently, where you had to help develop the base, and that's where Agent Orange come in. I think they blasted it with Agent Orange to kill all the vegetation, and then they drop a couple dozers in there. I mean, like I say, there wasn't a blade of grass in any of those. And then when you put the soldiers in there, you had to dig the trenches by hand around there. And the toilets, the latrines we didn't like it because the toilet was terrible. In the jungle, you're sort of in charge of your own, and you didn't have much, believe me.
All right. Now, did you encounter civilians much?
Well, at first when we were on the LZ, we moved, was there 4 months or something on LZ Professional, and then went to LZ Marianne, which was another 30 kilometers or more out in the jungle to way out there. Like, I thought we were near Laos, where there would be no sign of other fire bases, or if you got up in the air on LZ Professional, you could see the ocean over there. Well, that was gone. You were totally in the jungle out there. And we were mixed with this southern Vietnamese armies. Okay. And that was quite a group, but you learned soon that they were kind of going downhill. And it was bad to be there at the end of the war, knowing what's coming up. And but civilians, oddly enough, we were on Marianne a week or something, patrolling all around there. We'll come to find out you have these mountain yards, we call them. I have a pretty good picture in there. I don't know if I showed you that big one, because I don't remember explaining that. It's very unusual. But come to find out, here we got this fire base, and we've been there for a month off and on, and there they are, 500 yards from right there, and they're in those bushes right there. 20 people live right there, but that was never had weapons. They never did booby traps and all that monkey business for us. But the one picture I showed you is one of those groups on the fire base, and very unfortunately, they lost their homes and villages and were shipped back to what's known as civilization to live within the villages. They wouldn't let them be out there. We were in a free fire zone. There wasn't supposed to be anybody there.
Right. Or at least if there was anyone out there, you could shoot them.
Yes.
So, yeah, so they were trying to move a lot of the civilian population into areas that the South Vietnamese controlled. At least that was the...
1970, they should have been done by then. But we ran into a lot of mountain yards. They weren't civilians at all. That's a completely different...
Yeah. Well, they weren't Vietnamese. They were a different ethnic group.
Definitely.
And the Vietnamese didn't like them.
They were mountain people,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah. And sometimes in some areas they would actually help the Americans and do different things.
Oh, they were wonderful. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, how long was it once you were out there before you actually kind of got into combat, or beyond having the mortar round fall on you somewhere?
Well, yeah, geez, I was there 3 or 4 days the first time. You're back there in that base, a mortar, it ain't apologizing whether you're in the bush or not. We got mortared there, and that was pretty exciting. The old barber shop guy that maybe trimmed your hair, by golly, they caught him in the wire there, all shot up and killed him. This nice guy. That story, that's one that happened. And I forget where I'm going so often.
Well, I was just asking, but I guess out in the field, how long did it take you to kind of get into a combat situation?
Out there, when I got to Marianne again, my group's already out in the field that time, and we got mortared on the base right there. So when you get out in the field, you might be out there 5 days or a week or something. These periods come and go, but the combat's pretty hot. You got something to think about for a while. But it's so erratic that you might get it 3 or 4 days in a row, or you might not hit it for. I had a tiny little diary, but it's microscopic sort of thing that I almost can't read. And I made notes if you ever made abbreviations on your own and don't know what that stuff means anymore. I mean, I guess being addled or something.
All right. Well, if you did encounter the enemy out in the field, I mean, would it be as like a single sniper, or would they ambush you, or what would happen?
It was kind of normal that we'd get attacked, maybe, but more likely than not, even as our large 70 and 80 man unit going down through the trails, very quiet the whole thing, and we'd be so far out there, they had no idea anybody was out there. Mm-hmm. We always thought we were we were B Company, kind of the lead of the whole people out there. If anything was happening, B Company did it, and you go out there and find it. And we'd run into people on the trail and surprise them, and they might shoot at you, but they were running. And a lot of them were younger kids, teenagers.
Now, were they in North Vietnamese uniforms, or do you think they were
not
Viet Cong?
Rarely, yeah. Although later, I got a real good map of Vietnam, and I mean the whole country. If you look right where Marianne was, it says Viet Cong stronghold. Mm-hmm. And now they're telling me where I was right there. You bet.
Okay, so you're lucky. Yeah, and if they're not in conventional military uniforms, then they're Viet Cong. Yeah, that's pretty standard there. Okay. Now I guess I was trying to sort of get you to kind of just explain a little bit what can happen if you encounter. So sometimes you meet somebody on the trail and it's just an accident.
Lots of times, yeah.
And would you ever get ambushed or hit mines or things like that?
The booby traps, our own hand grenades and stuff. More likely than not, it was stuff that was. If our guys didn't want to carry things, they might throw hand grenades off the trail there that we get attacked by later. Mm-hmm. I mean, I hate to say anything negative about these, but that was the case a lot of times. We carried a great deal of weight. And like I said, I carried 8 quarts of water at one time. That's 20 pounds of water, mm-hmm. kind of. But we went on long trips at times, and we'd be in the bad guy neighborhood in a night logger. And I remember one time where you had to put people way out away from your main group and be there all night out there, 2 or 3 of you. And we got back to the main group at 7 in the morning, getting ready to go, and we got attacked from all sides. And the main thing, the jungle is so thick, it was very unusual to see anybody, but you'd see over there a couple hundred feet or meters or something, just a wall of flame from their guns. And that was usually how we fought, is shoot kind of at the base of that fire right there. Mm-hmm. And it's not like you found body count or anything much, because they were hauling each other off and trying to get away. But it's quite exciting.
So sometimes they would figure out where you were camped, and then
They could follow you.
yeah, and then just open up. But then would they move off quickly? Would they break contact pretty quickly?
Usually, yeah. It wasn't a extended battle with us, and they could do their damage to us, and we were out of business. We had to take care of our wounded, have them shipped off, and then you're in a different plan when you've been attacked out there. And we got supplied every 3 days with the sea ration deal and our mail, usually, and so they could figure, they see that helicopter over there in the middle of nowhere, you got a pretty good idea where they, and say, oh yeah, that's B Company, don't go there. And the other ones, we had another company that was attacked so much, and it's unfortunate the way they did it, is they just put the new individuals in there, and they never had a group that got together. There was people there that new people that were only a month or two old, and over half of them like that. You just can't. They're afraid of doing anything. They don't know anything, and that's the way it was done.
Okay. Yeah. So sometimes the company will have either good leadership, or there will be some of the NCOs, the experienced soldiers, know what to do. And if a company knows how to operate, the North Vietnamese maybe stay away from it. And if they're not as good, then they're targeted.
People brag, but our outfit was the best. I was proud to be around that outfit. And some of these other ones, if you get back to my battalion and everything here, if you look in the book, in the Marianne book, if I'm not mistaken, Charlie Company was on the hill. And the great big NVA forces, they knew that we were being deployed away from that area and everything. Okay, let's go clean it up, and we don't have to put up with that anymore. And I think, I was home a couple months, and I never heard anything about it. A friend of mine knew that I had been there, and he told me at work, that guy.
All right. Now, you mentioned at one point before the interview that at some point you actually went into Laos.
Yeah. As this progresses, our group of the real good guys, and you had these groups that got together and learned from each other and all that, but this whole group wound up being ready to go home. And this is some of the things that the big shots can do, is they go, hey, these guys are really good. Let's go use them one more time. Let's take them to the A Shaw Valley. And I mean, go get your clock cleaned, and to get into the Laos thing. And so we went there for a couple weeks at a time. Nobody else wanted to go down in the valley, but we were damn fools and wound up going there by ourselves and got attacked pretty bad. One time there was, my platoon, there was, it's just numbers, but I think there was 28 of us. And at the end of the day, there was 7 left that weren't wounded, or we didn't have many casualties.
At least not many killed.
Right, but they all got wounded in one way or the other, and helicopters crashing right over there, and wow. This week was more traumatic than the rest of the whole tour, kind of thing.
And what month was that?
Well, it's sort of a traditional Army thing, early June, like the 6th of June, they do stuff like that.
All right.
It's a history.
Yeah, it says commemorate D-Day or something along those lines. But okay, so you have that kind of thing, but then because the A Shaw, that's where the Hamburg Hill fight had been the year before, and there was a lot of hard fighting, and then
I have a friend that was there, my brother-in-law.
Okay. Now, along the way, let's see, the area where you were, when was the monsoon? When was the bad weather?
Well, that's like our northern winter,
Okay.
more or less. And that come and gone when we were there at times, where you'd be wet for a month, and you might have to have this big clunky, like a little poncho that only covered down to your waist kind of thing. And I'm pretty sure most of us had it. It was almost like you have to have this, you have to have a hard hat. Sometimes I didn't care to wear it, but you know, and that, you had to have the poncho. And we slept on a real clunky, old-fashioned water mattress. You know, the one about the big as the thing here, and what a piece of junk. I mean, it was so heavy and so hard. It would be filthy, you know, and then you'd lay on it. You wake up in the morning, you felt like somebody rubbed dirt in your face. I mean, and it was normal to just be dirty and feel. I got a picture that it just looks like I crawled through the mud. I probably did at the time, but you know, if you got clothes once a month or something, you got them because they ripped or something. You didn't get them because they were dirty.
Okay. But when they did resupplies for you in the field, they weren't bringing in new uniforms
Never.
or things like that?
If you wanted to request a pair of boots, it's up to you to ask for that, or you might get a few pair of shoestrings or something. But you kind of liked your boots if you could keep them. And if you wanted a shirt, you could get one. But that wasn't normal. And you probably feel a luck thing, I got a feeling. You might want to just, hey, nope, didn't take any bullets last time or something. Didn't think about that part, I guess.
All right. Okay. So you basically, by June of 1970, you got into the A Shaw, and there are North Vietnamese there who don't like you. But then from there you move around. And
well, after the A Shaw Valley was kind of this mission, we called it,
mm-hmm.
you know, and we're there for a couple weeks, and oh boy, like I say, the sky full of mortars and that kind of a deal. They had this, a 51 caliber. We never saw that kind of stuff. And we had the jets right there, where you'd be on a little hill the size of this building, and that jet would disappear down below the hilltop thing there. It was kind of exciting for a mechanical nut case, and him bombing the 51 cal over there, and it's really goofy what you see. But
okay. Now, do you have any idea what you were doing in Laos?
well, after we left the A Shaw Valley and went over there, and lost all these people. So you've got all these new recruits and everything. So they're going to send you over there. We only were as a platoon. So say there was 30 of us. And we weren't used to having a small group, but
right.
Very good NCO in charge of the group. And so we were over there patrolling around looking for what's over there. We weren't attacking anything with that small of a group. And
did you find anything?
well, one time, boy, I'd love to find that spot. We're and nothing's happening out there, and had that other occasion of all that violence and everything. So this is just heaven, you know. And taking a break, we found a giant waterfall and coming down the side of the mountain with the pool and everything. And well, okay, you guys you don't want to take a bath here? Guard us, and I'm jumping in there and getting clean. I've got one that I'm sitting in there like the castle crown thing. And boy, everybody loved that. I wish I had that picture of myself. But so we were there, and one of our guys come over and he goes, "Hey, there's a guy over there," you know, and he was a new guy. And oh well, what'd you do? Well, oh, you know, like he was anybody else would have shot the guy or something. But so we kind of calling in, telling the guys way back, okay, hey, well, this happened, and somebody's over there, and so the guys that are 50 miles away or something make the decision on what you're going to do, and they say, all right, get your stuff together here. We're having a break out there, and they've got a map, of course. They know what's next to you more than you do there. So they said, okay, go on up there, and we're going up this big side of this big hill. And then we get up there, and geez, we're not very far away. Usually, you see people over there, and you think you're in another country, you're just going to keep going. But we get to the top of the hill. oh, maybe it was a quarter mile away or something over there where that waterfall was right there. Okay, stop there and circle up and just a minute here. So we're up there on the top wondering what's going on. And we look at a rolling hills by us. We're way up and kind of cleared for a long ways, but this rolling hill, we had come through the jungle and we had come down this path over the open field like. I mean, this is a huge valley. And we're looking over there and a line of guys come over there, about 6 guys. And we're going, wow, these guys, they're 6 foot something. And they all had hard hats on, steel helmets, kind of even probably American. And we're going, well, they're Americans, but wait a minute. We're the only ones within 20 miles. I mean, this is the only time you're like that, but this happened to us. And they go like, okay, line up in a row. And as they come over, this happens within seconds. They're making the other thing. Here, line up like this, like an execution on these guys. And be surprised how guys can get away in wide open fields that maybe you only got 2 or 3 out of 6 of them or something. But yeah, them guys, we figured, was there Chinese there? And we always thought Russian. Always had heard that Russian MiG thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, there were a lot of Chinese aiding the Vietnamese in different ways. And if you were not actually in Vietnam at the time, who knows what was there. But there would have been Eastern European advisors and things too. So anything is possible.
The Eastern advisors were with the North Vietnamese?
You could have had Russians or Poles or
We
Eastern.
also had the story of the American, whatever he was.
A deserter or something.
Yeah, and he was fighting with the guys, and they were right in our neighborhood, supposedly, you know?
But you saw a group who did not look like the usual Vietnamese.
Ooh, it was real different, you know, and then just a unique experience to have a field, you know, these 6 or 8 guys coming after you, and wow.
Now, when you were in the A Shar or you went over into Laos in those areas, did you find large enemy trails, like the kinds that they could move a lot of stuff
Well, the
along?
NVA attacked us in the A Shah there, and we always had the thing, you know, what's happening here, where it was in the morning, and we'd been moving like more than 24 hours, and that was unusual. We usually stopped every night, but this time we just kept going. Well, that's the way you disappear out there. And
But were there signs of big trails or things? That the
oh,
enemy
this
used a
is
lot?
huge by the A Shah Valley and that. That's LZ West and LZ Siberia. You know, the whole thing is through there. But, oh yeah, this is good. I was getting to that too, is when we were near Marianne, which isn't much different than you get into Laos, we were in the high mountains, super difficult. They couldn't resupply you and everything, so it was hard to have you out there in the first place. You had to blow up the trees or something to get a helicopter down in there and stuff like that. But we were on top of a pretty good sized mountain as a company size, and then they go, oh, you're going way out there? Okay, Joe's sick and doesn't feel good. Get him out here. And you were full strength when you went out there. But we were marching back and forth around there, and by golly, we come to this one spot. I don't think I was dreaming, but it was like a small highway in the enclosed jungle where a deuce and a half could cruise through there. And it seems like that we just come to that, and you'd think you'd make a big deal, or you didn't follow trails. That was forbidden also. And nobody said a word. Like you crossed it, maybe they knew you were going to go across it, but you just kept going, and, well, you didn't want that kind of NVA on your back. So it was something to be fearful, really. But I never saw it only once. But in Laos, it was pure rolling mountain.
Okay. just a jungle area. All right. Now, you mentioned you'd be out on these patrols and they'd last a couple of weeks or whatever.
Yes.
Now, do you go back to a fire base then?
Well, when you went back to the fire base, you had to dig the ditches and do that, and they were real bitchy at you, and you had this and that. In the jungle, call it more dangerous or not, it probably wasn't any more dangerous than being on that base there, and we didn't like that. So we tended to stay in the jungle.
Yeah. But you would periodically, you go back to the fire base. If you go back to the fire base, could you replace your uniform or anything like that?
That was easier, yeah, but you always had that, probably not much easier though. It was just if you needed one, you'd get it kind of thing,
Okay.
you know.
All right. Now, did you get any kind of R&R or real time out of the field?
The R&R, the stand downs, we call them,
Yeah.
every 2 or 3 months we would get 3 days off. And they sent lock, stock, and barrel of us back to the rear. You know, can go get your wounds checked and you actually had a shower. And on this every 2 to 3 month thing, you could get all the clothes you wanted. There's the new boots. So every 2 or 3 months, new shoes or whatever. Some people did not want to change their boots. Mm-hmm. If you got good feet, they're comfortable. But I got a picture of me standing on the porch there with all new clothes. So you did have that all new clothes deal, and you learned to keep it clean deal.
And where would you go for the stand down?
Well, that was back to Chu Lai, to our big base there.
Okay.
We didn't have a lot of guard duty. Some would get attached to that, but a lot of guys were pretty much beer. You had to be 21 years old and an E6 to buy liquor. Mm-hmm. But I was an E5 and 21, and I'd usually roll up my sleeves. And when you walk in there in Vietnam and a guy asks for a bottle of liquor, you're going to tell him no. Mm-hmm. You know.
All right. Now, were there guys who were smoking pot too?
I have a picture there too of a guy who was. And again, I'd been there 6 months. I was over 20 years old and never smoked weed. Mm-hmm. Southwestern Michigan was, you know, I guess whatever it was backwards or we weren't doing that. But This guy goes, California kid, he goes, you what? You never smoked weed? And well, a few minutes later, there's a picture of us 3 standing there, and it's just after I smoked my first joint. So, but it was only back at our party place. Usually in the field, I never smelt anything. Or
Did people smoke cigarettes in the field?
We got them regularly in a great big box that we got at SP Pack, and it was real common for them to get that. And sometimes you'd even in the field, you got this huge box that had the different cigarettes, even Kents, and you'd throw them away. So all the Vietnamese were smoking Kents, and and you'd throw them away, and your enemy was getting everything that was left. And I'd always say, hey, I'm not smoking cigarettes, and everybody wanted cigarettes. You never got enough. And I'd say, I get to have a Tampa cigars, because I would still smoke one of them once in a while. I kind of liked them, but I try not to. And I'd say, well, we'll gather these cigarettes, and I'll get some for me too, and give them to you guys. But I say, I get first pick out of there. And nobody was having any issues with that, you know.
Okay. Now, did you get an out-of-country R&R?
Well, I like saving the best for, like being old now. I hope I saved the best for last. And I was there from February, or even January, and I saved it for November. And everybody else was, let's get out of here, and, but to me it was still like having something saved just before I went home. So in late November, I wound up going to Australia, to Sydney, Australia. Never left town, hardly, goofing around at all the bars and everything. And had about $400 on me. That was a lot of money in 1970. And but so I did have a 6-day. They flew you to Australia and the whole deal, and you clean all that. But that's something funny. In the airport, when you're in there, you got that group of people, and they go, okay, like you're a classroom thing. Before you leave the airport here, you will buy 2 brand new suits and ties and matching shirts. I still have all that. And they say, when you buy your stuff here and when you're done, you can go to town. But that's the kind of stuff they were making us have, this nice clothes and all that.
Okay. And how did the Australians treat you?
Well, here we are in their bars. Mostly I was probably dealing with their girls a lot. And they were friendly enough. I mean, we were on the same side and all that. And I think it was just a rock band place I went to all the time. It seems like the hotel bill for 5 or 6 days, and this is a luxurious place, and you know, I don't know if they had a pool. I wouldn't even have known where that was, but I think it was $56 for 5 or 6 days. Wow. You know, so I guess I spent it in the bar.
Well, yeah, you had to buy the suits too.
And well, that was almost $100 for the. And but the first day I got there, kind of, these girls know what the story is on these guys there, and so let's say we hooked up for the week, kind of thing. And I always said that I didn't know that there was hillbillies in Australia, because she was, wow, so much. It was hard to believe. You'd think you was in Michigan.
All right. Okay. So was it hard to go back to Vietnam, or was it just
from there?
Yeah.
Well, this was late November again. I was going home in a couple months. You know, I was confident enough. I had no issues about that. Let's go. Let's get this done. You know, and I get back there December 1st or something, and I had less than 2 months to go before I went home. And it was happening that different people were going home a month or 2 early. But you didn't hold your breath for that normally.
Right. Okay. Now, when you go back, do you go back out in the field again?
Oh, yeah, immediately. Yeah.
All right. Now, was it difficult when your unit took casualties and took losses? Because you mentioned a little bit off camera about being like right next to somebody who gets killed, or being friends with somebody for a month and then they're gone.
Yeah, it was kind of, but I always seemed like that being an appointment and never really hit any issues or landmines, or nobody attacked me up there. And what happens a lot is once you get by or something, they might attack the back of your outfit or the middle. And it seems like and that they'd come in and take a helicopter, but I'm up there guarding the front trail or something like that, that it was right there, but that I wasn't exposed to it, it seems, but there was plenty there.
So you seem to be usually in the right place at the right time.
I think I'm a lucky fella,
All right.
for some reason.
All right. Now you think back about your tour in Vietnam. Are there other particular memories that kind of stand out for you?
Well, when again after the big battle and depleted outfit, we had a leader that we weren't going to do anything particular, go any battle. So you wind up getting this guy. I guess he was a ranger or something, but we never understood how he got that. And we super hot in the summer, June, July it would have been, and I don't know why, and I'm handing out the malaria pills and that. You take one every day, I think it was, and you take one a month, kind of. And I wind up getting malaria. So I wound up going really bad. You don't want to do that. My temperature was high as 103. I think it gave me mental health problems the rest of my life, probably. But so I got shipped from Chu Lai down to
Cameron? Or
China Beach.
China Beach, okay.
China Beach is the big hospital.
Right.
So I'm there for a while, and it's a normal thing. You're supposed to be there 10 days. And they said, yeah, we're going to tell you what's happening here, and you're going back. So, get used to that. Well, I think in my deal where it was unusual, when you're in the hospital, you have your top on, and you have pajama bottoms that separates you from the other soldiers, because you're in the hospital, And I'm shooting a breeze with a guy in one of the offices, and I won't say why, but he says, you know something? He says, we're looking for a sergeant here. And kind of like he was a clerk, but he says, we need the sergeant for some duties. If you want to volunteer for this, you'll be here a month. And did I owe anybody anything? I was having a pretty good time there, and so I accepted this job that they had there, and basically it was after breakfast you had 100 men or something, and they had a giant outdoor theater with the benches and had a huge screen in front, but it was all in the sand and everything, and they had a regular projector that did Bullet and all these cool movies every night. They did them twice a night in case you're on guard duty or something. But in the morning, the place would be a disaster. That was my job, to take these 100 Vietnam veterans, out of the hospital and everything. They get done with breakfast. Okay, you guys, we got to clean this up. And they did what I told them, and I usually could have had them do every sliver of it. But I try to get them to do a pretty good job. Come on, let's get this done, because you ain't leaving until I tell you. And I suppose they resented it, but by golly, we got together and cleaned that theater out there, and I'd kind of go, okay, go ahead, you can leave, if you want to stay and help. Usually nobody ever did. And I would finish by myself, but what the heck. I had 10 o'clock in the morning. I was there, I had a great time of it. I don't know about the bar and everything. The important thing is I had my teeth all done. And the average Vietnam soldier didn't have that access. And I'd love to find that guy's name, the dentist.
All right. So your unit didn't mind that you were gone, or did no one notice?
You're an individual out there. You get back, the times were changing so much. The big battle, all them guys went. We were getting so many new guys in there. And I come back, I was already a squad leader in that, and you get back, okay, we need a squad leader here. You take these guys.
Right.
I got that picture. And no, it was no big deal.
You were commenting before you kind of got into that story about your new company commander and this guy you thought was there a problem with him? Or?
Well, like one day I tried to be, things were pretty cool, and I take the camera out, if you see the pictures, and I was taking a picture. He says, you put that away. Well, nobody ever said anything like that, And I had a little ammo pouch there for it, but we put it away. But he was just this way, an actual ranger too. But how the heck he made it as a ranger? Wow, he was little, short, scrunty. Wow, I just couldn't get over what he must have been done. But he was only out there a week, and as a force, people complained he was gone.
Okay. Was he just too much of a stickler for the rules, or just trying to throw his weight around too much, or?
I guess you'd call it stickler for the rules. It wasn't what we were doing out there, and I don't know. It was a rare occasion where if you got assigned to something, you usually did that.
You didn't rotate officers out that quickly. All right.
Oh, never.
Okay.
They usually lasted, a 6-month tour was a officer's tour, and a lot of times they would stick around with their group for maybe the whole year.
Okay. All right. Other particular incidents or things that stand out for you?
Well, at the end of that, when I did come back, and I had I had my squad, and that's a big thing to have these, well, only 5 or 6 guys there, and you're cutting point, and that's your little group you're with all the time. But the lieutenant in charge of the platoon and the big shot sergeant were different in there. And I think they were really, really party thing. And it was a different era of what was happening. Vietnam was, and we felt that too. It was, what do you call the de-escalation?
Yeah, the
People are,
Vietnamization and
definitely.
all of that. Yeah.
And we're going home, and so you get a different attitude. And we didn't have most of that one platoon, or it was the company that was wiped out quite a bit. And that's something too. When we went down into the valley, we wondered later, oh, we heard we got attacked, 100 men got attacked by 2 battalions of the NVA, which later they commented they couldn't believe that we were such a small outfit and put that much. And come to find out, when we got back up on the hill, we had 2 companies behind us, and when we went down in the hill, the first group, they never come off the hill, lock, stock, and barrel at a time. So my one friend was a little hostile when he got up there and found that out, knocked somebody out. But that was that was Bob again. You know, the one with relatives.
All right. I want to follow up on a couple of different things that you sort of mentioned in passing here. One of them was you were talking about when you would rejoin the unit after the time at China Beach, and you had a new command team there and so forth. You said something about them partying, or?
Well, it seemed to be a different kind of thing out there. You could only do so much in the jungle. It ain't like you had alcohol or, and the weed thing. You didn't see that.
Okay.
You know.
But I guess they weren't as good as some of the leaders you'd had earlier?
Not at all. And here I was really the lead person in the platoon by far.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there was no NCO in the platoon that, I mean, even had a minute in country. And then these 2 guys would not let me try to advise them, or I usually just would say, this is how we do things here, and this and this and this. Not trying to be a real, you know, stickler, and I didn't want to insult anybody, but here, this, oh yeah, this, we do this and this, and but they were really bad to the point that they took one of these guys, the one that wouldn't fire on the guy that snuck up on us. I mean, he was still only there a couple months, and they replaced me. And then here I am, kind of displaced. I think also too, it seems like a small part of the story, but October 1st, into this, and I'm going to go home in a few months, but I got a letter that I wrote to a friend of mine that I went to basic training, and he was from Chelsea, Michigan, and I wrote a letter to him, and well, where is Hank, and wanted to know where he was, because lost track of him in Vietnam, I believe it was, and didn't write back and forth to just my mom I wrote to. Nobody else wrote to me. And she wrote a letter to me, and well, we were real sad. Hank got home the other, like October 1st, and he got killed in a car accident the first day he was home. And here he is, served in Vietnam for a year, my best friend ever at the time, and I was looking forward to having a friend there, and I think that took a lot of gas out of me. And it was kind of around the time where I didn't have my squad anymore, and I think I went to maybe the command center and might have been, with them guys in their security or something, and it wasn't the same though.
Okay. All right. You also mentioned this fellow Bob. What was he like, or what was his story?
Oh, he was fun. He was a real partier, and drinking and the whole deal, and like I said, he claimed to well, be relative of the Kennedys or something, but some of the stuff he pulled, never seen anything like that. And they had a guy that was escaped, and a American soldier that was the bad guy going to our jail over there or something, and wow. And Bob gets to be the one, here's a 45, Bob, you got a 3-day leave of absence, kill this guy if he blinks, kind of thing, but Bob got to go, you know. And you kind of believe people, sort of, or the guy that said his uncle was a Wisconsin politician of some kind. And, oh yeah, sure, but gee, he disappeared in a couple weeks.
All right. So for you, basically, now as you get short, do your duties change at all, or do you keep just doing?
Well, I had my platoon, I had my squad there, and kind of, one of the leaders in the whole platoon, and then was going into just being with the command center as their security. So that's basically nothing. I don't think I rarely did point or anything after that.
So you are kind of with the command post rather than.
They actually sent me away from my platoon too, which was unusual. And we're out there in the middle of nowhere, and back to those guys not following rules. They said, well, okay, we're here, and we're going to send you over there, and you had to have a radio on you, and you had to have, what was it, 3 things. Big deal is you had to have a radio with you, and like there was 3 of us they sent over there.
This is like a listening post, or?
When you're going over there and you're going to get a couple miles through the jungle, and you're coming on your own people, what if something happens? What if somebody fires at me? Nobody has any idea. So that's a big deal about everybody has a radio, a full-fledged PRC 25. And but see, those guys did that kind of thing, and I'm really aggravated. I'm afraid of going by myself.
Okay. But what was the point of having you that far out? Was that just to let them know if somebody was coming?
Well, we were in one platoon and operating, in a mile or 2 or away from the main group here and there, and then never happens that you send this little group, and I'm one of the guys. Kind of, they're getting rid of me. I guess maybe I was a little vocal.
There you go.
Saying how I thought it should be done, and by golly, you get going over there. I think we had some real fire activity here or there at the end of the trip, and I'm going like, I hear this firing going on up front, but what do we do now? You can't ask anybody any questions. But we did make it there, okay.
All right. So how does your tour kind of wind up? How do you find out you're leaving and when and that kind of thing?
Well, it was, I guess I probably walk point or cut trail a little in some because I wasn't completely doing nothing, but we were ready to go on, like we call these things, mission for a 3-week to who knows, 6 weeks thing. And we were on Marianne there, and you got all your supplies together to go on. You get your C rations and make sure you got all your bullets and everything. And we were getting on the helicopters were come on there, and they go, hey Johnson, get over here. It's December 15th or something. I got 2 months and a half to go, and here, go home. So December 16th or 17th or something, I'm in the jungle, and I was home the 20th. So from yeek to the
Okay. So
wow.
Physically, how do they get you home? So you get your orders. You're not going on the mission. So now what?
Well, you're so far out there. It's only flying back to Chu Lai and doing your orders over there, and maybe be able to take a bath again. We never took a bath out there unless you'd douche off in a stream, you'd say. But we went back to Chu Lai, and I was only there a day or 2, and then they flew me from there I just can't remember how we went back back and forth there. I flew in a C-130 before, which is like being in the back of a flatbed truck.
Yeah, it's a cargo plane.
Yeah, and went back to China,
To
Cameron Bay, yeah, back there. And that was the main place where the jets come and go, the civilian jets. And I have the picture of the airplane that come and get me. I thought that's kind of unusual for a person to act. No big deal unless it was me,
Okay.
kind of thing. But and they put you all together. I did bring home SKS that we captured in a large group of weapons, and I guess it was probably my turn.
Okay.
And I brought that home.
All right. And then what's the route flying back?
Well, same as before, going from Cameron Bay through Tokyo again, and back through Alaska. Never been there before, but and then from there back to
Fort Lewis
Fort
again?
Lewis, of
Yeah.
course.
Okay.
And
When you get off the plane at Fort Lewis, what kind of processing do you get?
well, it was the same thing of physical. They always check. Yeah, and I have that, of course, record of, I should see. I think I was 185. I think I'm the same weight as I come home. I was 21 when I come home, and I showed you the picture of me coming off the plane. That's kind of unusual. Cold as hell there, and guys are getting off in jungle clothes, but I had a coat. And you go there and you take your physical and all that, and as soon as you can, you're processed out of there. And then I flew from Fort Lewis, Washington, to Chicago, and it was very unusual. A couple guys I'd been in NCO school with, and they were very close friends. So how the heck is this? I hadn't seen them in over a year, and we're flying on that same flight. So when we get to Chicago, we go in the bar, and we still had our uniforms. In fact, at that time, they required you to have your uniform on, dress uniform, to fly on the planes.
Well, if you were going to fly standby, if you're going to fly the cheapest fare, you had to have the uniform. Because a lot of guys talk about how they would be told to switch to civilian clothes. But if you had the uniform on, you could get the really cheap tickets.
To me, it was, if you didn't have it, you weren't getting on there, kind of
All right.
thing. And hey, I just wanted to get home.
Right. Okay. So anyway, so you're in the bar with these guys, and you've got your uniforms on.
Yeah, had a couple drinks. No big deal. No.
So you didn't see any protesters or?
No, never did. Never had that kind of issue.
Good. Okay. And then you've been discharged at this point, right?
Oh yeah,
'Cause you got
you're
out.
gone. You're out. I could have went to California if I'd have wanted to.
Okay. So you get as far as Chicago, and then what?
Well, it was kind of odd that it cost $13 to fly from Chicago to Benton Harbor. I lived in Benton Harbor at the time. Probably military discount or something.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that odd. And so I put my duffel bag there, which I hadn't seen in a year either. When you get to Vietnam, they take this, and there's nothing you want in there, and like you don't need anything. And so I got that back for going home, and I checked that into the airport. So I'm going to walk over to the plane, and it's only Chicago, and I lived in Benton Harbor. And I see these people coming through the airport there, and come to find out it's my sister's best friend and her sister, and they were picking up her husband. And I get a ride in a brand new Thunderbird home with that's off the wall there.
Mm-hmm. Did you get your bag back?
I went to Benton Harbor the next day, and they flew it over there, and I just picked it up. It was easier that way, but how off the wall was that?
Mm-hmm. All right. So you get back home, you're out of the Army. Do you go back to work right away, or what do you do?
Well, when I got home, it was December 20th or something, and my mom's '63 Chevy hardtop was sitting there in the driveway. I'm freezing, but I think I had a coat on, and she wasn't home, kind of in the evenings for some reason. So I sat down in the car and for a while, and so she got home later. But the rest of that is you had, to me, it was, maybe it was my company, or some people say they have a year to go back to work, but they told us 90 days. I guess I believe a lot of these things. And I bought a car within 5 days, a 66 Chevelle. I love that car. And then I had over $3,000 cash. That was a lot of money, being a sergeant and everything over there. And there's a lot of people that got home with less than $1,000. So they went there in the war and the whole thing. They come back without a dime. Well, I thought I better spend the rest of this money, and I bought a '59 Corvette a month after I got home. So I kind of patched that up and everything. And I had a friend in Florida that was living down there, and he wrote me a couple times. He was my friend before I went in. And I went to visit him. I had 3 months before I had to report in. And so I went and stayed with him, and he was a tree trimmer and doing stuff like that, which was really, that was my cup of tea. I still liked that stuff. And so I visited with him for a while, but I had to be at work at a certain day to get my seniority and all that back. So I wanted to go back to Avion Coach. And so I went to Florida for, a month and a half or something, and I really enjoyed it down there. And I probably could have stayed, I guess, but what the heck, I had a job and everything in Michigan, so I was glad I came back.
All right. Now, how easy or hard was it to adjust to civilian life again?
I guess I was probably proud of myself, all by myself. I had a good job. I had sort of a family outfit that I worked for. I worked in a wood shop too at that place, and I kind of liked that kind of a deal, and I thought they treated me pretty fair, and so that was pretty easy. And it wasn't very much longer. I wound up getting a brand new double wide next to the factory where I walked to work every day. So, and I come home for lunch. So that was, easy going, I guess.
Okay. Because a lot of guys talk about how they had to learn a different vocabulary when they got back, or that kind of thing. Did you have to, or did you never get much into swearing a lot when you were in Vietnam? And
I'm bad now.
okay.
I'm really bad. I wish I could get away from that. I don't think we really got into that.
Okay.
I think, or even about every time you spoke to somebody, you never spoke more than you had to. And at night, it was really toned down, and it maybe cools you out a little bit, but
Okay. And did you have any of the kind of PTSD reactions where you're startled by loud noises, or you're suspicious
yeah,
of
that's
things? Or
I think I always did that, and just eventually shrug it off, but
Okay.
no.
All right. So I guess as you look over the time you spent in the service, what do you think you took out of that, or how did that affect you?
Well, other than kind of doing a good job for our country, that was part of the idea, and what did I take out of it? Like I say, there was a lot of camaraderie during that couple years, and I was with large groups at a time, and that was what do you call a civil thing, interacting with people and all that. Now I live in a little tiny town that you could put in this building here, and I don't know what I learned much.
Okay. I mean, do you think, were you any different when you got home than when you left?
I didn't think so, but our reaction is we weren't talking to anybody about it, didn't have anybody to talk about it, and especially family never asked, and to this day still, and I don't bring it up.
All right. But
They've never seen those pictures.
Yeah, because you've got those things, pictures that you took, and I guess, but you are involved with some veterans groups, or you at least
Well,
with your own unit.
The last 20 years, I've been going to the Battle Creek veterans for my own health thing, but and kind of surprised me for different reasons. This group that called me, they were there before I was, but they still invited this. It was just the platoon together, like 20 to 30 guys, and so I started going to that about 15 years ago, and I go most every year. We're going to Branson, Missouri this year, and one of the things I noticed about that is, let's say there's 20 of us in the group, that I think there was 1 or 2 bachelors that ever come to the thing. They were in bad shape, and I drank way too much, but some of these guys, like this one, he doesn't come anymore, but I'm the only bachelor, and that's why these guys are still there and healthy, is they have a bunch of original wives that have taken good care of each other and everything, and I think I'm kind of a different person in the group, and I'm not afraid to go talk to the ladies and how you doing, and you know, and they know who I am enough that some of the guys knew me.
Okay, so basically, this is sort of, you were kind of maybe there at the end of the time when a lot of that group was there.
Yes, yeah, and when I was introduced to those guys, and somebody said, "Oh yeah, this is Sergeant Johnson, the guy," and I think I was actually going to shake his hand or something, which would have been forbidden in the jungle. You didn't do that kind of thing, or you can't salute or anything. But he looks at me, and he goes, "I know who he is," you know, and that's my welcome to the outfit,
Right.
and never another word said about it, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. But a real good group of guys.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you've certainly got an interesting story.
Oh boy.
Well, it winds up in a lot of different places, but that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to thank you for taking the time to share
Okay,
today.
good.
All right.